I'm Dr. Archer Crossley. Welcome to Real World Pediatrics. Okay, I think you're going to need an ice pack on your head to get through this one. It's a little technical, but I'll try to summarize it a little bit, make it a little bit better for you. It's entitled Vaccines and the Scientific Method. That's what I really want to talk about. Now, when you watch television, you're going to be bombarded with all sorts of ideas, studies, and data, especially when it comes to vaccines. Everybody has a study, everybody's a doctor, everybody's an expert. Robert Kennedy Jr. and Brian Hooker are no different. Okay, so let's talk about the hepatitis B vaccine. In their book, Vax Unvax, Let the Science Speak, Kennedy and Hooker referred to 5 or 6 studies which supposedly link hepatitis B vaccine to any number of maladies, including diabetes, liver problems, SIDS, asthma, and allergies. Okay, so let's let the science speak. The first study that they refer to is entitled Hepatitis B Vaccine and Liver Problems in U.S. Children Less Than 6 Years Old. And the lead author is Monica A. Fisher. Now, Kennedy and Hooker make it sound all so simple when talking about this study. According to them, in this study, hepatitis B vaccine is positively correlated with liver disease. The problem with this study is that other scientists have refuted it. In a letter to Epidemiology, Anthony Fiore, Greg Armstrong, Eric Mast, and others give a scathing indictment to this study. Now, Anthony Fiore is a doctor with an MD and an MPH. That's a master of public health. And he is an epidemiologist who works at CDC. Now, my intention is not to get into the nitty-gritty of the arguments and the statistics by Dr. Fiore and colleagues, because that's not what I do as a regular pediatrician. I don't want to do that stuff. I don't even like that stuff. My job is to stand back and look at the larger picture. I'm just 50,000-foot view, okay? So what this letter illustrates is the importance, to me, of looking around a little bit when you hear someone, in this case, Kennedy and Hooker, quote a study. You know, science isn't always pretty and nice. And we don't accept something just because one person says it. We need to see if other professors and other researchers think the same thing. Now, as I say, the authors of this letter perform a scathing indictment of the study. And here's some of their quotes. And I'm going to read this to you. In their recent report, Fisher and Eklund claim that their analysis of National Health Interviews survey data indicates that hepatitis B, quote, is not a disease of childhood, close quote, and they question the logic of universal vaccination in the United States. Unfortunately, the authors either misunderstand or misrepresent hepatitis B epidemiology, overinterpret the results, and draw conclusions that have no epidemiologic or biologic plausibility. And Fisher and Eklund's poorly conceived and executed study should not be used to discredit hepatitis B vaccination of infants. Hepatitis B vaccine has been repeatedly proven to be safe and effective in clinical studies, and post-marketing surveillance has found no evidence of an increase in serious adverse events among vaccinated infants. Now, my point is not to say that these authors are right, so much as to say that science is not always as clean as people in the media portray it to be. You always hear people talking about settled science. We like other professors to examine a particular study and ask questions about it. We like them to poke holes in it to see if the study holds up. And when it doesn't hold up, then we usually state such. We don't go around and make statements in support of a particular argument unless we're damn sure that it is so. That's the difference between the sciences and the arts. The arts trains you to take an argument and fit facts around it to make that argument more effective. This is what a lawyer, usually trained in the arts, does in a courtroom. He often weaves a tale, no matter how fantastic, to prove a point. Science trains you to do the reverse, to look at the facts and see if there's a good argument to be made. As such, good scientists are rarely confident people, at least when it comes to science. So when you see a person claiming to be a scientist who is cocksure of himself, think twice. All good scientists hedge their statements. Now, in this same chapter on the reputed safety of the hepatitis B vaccine, Kennedy and Hooker refer to another study which purportedly claims that there is an association between the hepatitis B vaccine and diabetes. Apparently, Kennedy and Hooker believe this with certainty. The study, it's entitled The Timing of Pediatric Immunization and the Risk of Insulin-Dependent Diabetes, John Klassen et al., looked at the incidence of diabetes in kids after the hepatitis B vaccine was introduced in New Zealand decades ago. According to the study, the incidence of type 1 diabetes in children living in Christchurch, New Zealand rose from 11.2 per 100,000 to 18.1 per 100,000 after the introduction of the hepatitis B vaccine in 1988. Okay, hey, it seems like an open and shut case, right? Case closed. Unfortunately, in another study, other professors, DiStefano et al., claim that there is no correlation between hepatitis B vaccine and diabetes. Now, this article, entitled Childhood Vaccinations, Vaccination Timing, and Risk of Type 1 Diabetes Mellitus, states as much. In this large population-based case control study, we did not find an increased risk of type 1 diabetes associated with any of the routinely recommended childhood vaccines. Our study adds to previous research by providing data on newer vaccines, including hepatitis B, acellular pertussis, and varicella vaccines, blah, 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 blah. And ours is the first epidemiologic study to evaluate the possibility that timing of vaccination is related to risk of clinical diabetes in children. Our results on hepatitis B vaccine do not support the hypothesis. Risk of type 1 diabetes was not different between infants vaccinated at birth and those who received their first vaccination later in life. And then finally, they state, the results of our study and the preponderance of epidemiologic evidence do not support an association between any of the recommended childhood vaccines and an increased risk of type 1 diabetes. Suggestions that diabetes risk in humans may be altered by changes in the timing of vaccinations also are unfounded. So the science isn't settled at all in the way that Kennedy and Hooker think it is. And if I were a betting man, I'd bet that there is no connection. If there were, it would be all over the news. Professors who study this vaccine would be talking about it. I would be bombarded with communications in my office stating such. There would be all sorts of concerns raised. There aren't any. Thank you.